Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tim Demoff, President of National Sales and Marketing Executives, and Chairman of the board, and I'm President of Sachs Consulting and Security and Investigative Services. We appreciate everybody being with us today. We got a great speaker, Jim Hornyak from JW Hornyak Videoconference and Telecom. He's got some very interesting things to discuss with us. And first thing is, unfortunately, we had a national sales and marketing executive member who is actually a senior investigator employee of mine, Scott Lewis, pass suddenly this past week from a stroke and hemorrhaging in his brain, and he passed away last night. So I would like to offer up a 30-second memory of Scott. If everybody would just take 30 seconds in memory of Scott, and I would appreciate that. Thank you. I appreciate it. Scott was the type of guy always came to work. He put a smile on your face and a little harmony in your heart. It's the best way I can describe him. We're going to miss him both at our company and through NSME. And he was always excited to come and network and get to meet people at the NSME events. So we'll dearly miss him, and God bless him. All right, let's move on with today's event. I do want to make an announcement. We're excited. Today we got a great speaker, and in July 14th, we are going to start to go back to what we call live presentations or live events, and it'll be at Embassy Suites. They're on the expressway across from the Akron-Canton Airport. That will be a luncheon on July 14th. Toby Hoy will be talking about stages of team development. And that'll be our first Welcome Back to Reopen Live Ohio presentation, July 14th, noon. And then come August 11th, you'll have myself, Tim Demoff, speaking on July 11th. And I'm going to be talking about, as we move forward on the reopening of Ohio, and not necessarily, what's been going on. I think we got enough about what's going on, but I got some interesting statistics, facts, and progresses of how we're going to move forward. What are some of the challenges, and what are some of the things that are going to happen and that we're going to need to deal with as we move forward? So July 14th, August 11th, both of those are luncheons. They'll both be live, Embassy Suites across from the Akron-Canton Airport. Check us out on the web. With us today, also as a sponsor and technician of helping here, is Chris Smith with Lost Tribe Media and Focal Point. I want to turn it over to Chris because he's got some really interesting things to explain about what's going on today and what you can expect here in the future. Chris, take it away.
Thanks, Tim. Hi, everybody. And last few times, obviously, I've kind of started off bringing everybody up to speed on what's happened since the beginning of January and the merger of Focal Point, which is a full-service marketing agency here in Northeast Ohio, and Lost Tribe Media, obviously, as a full-service media production and live event production agency. And so we're really excited about the things that we're doing. Nobody obviously foresaw this, but I think a lot of you have been thinking very creatively, and that comes out of obviously everybody's marketing background and sales background, and trying to come up with solutions not only for yourselves but for your clients. And one of the things, I've been talking a little bit about these virtual events, and I see that a lot of people, depend upon what they're doing, and obviously Jim's going to talk about this today with how all of the technology works with virtual events. But something else that I've been talking to clients about, and we're starting to see this as we're opening up, as people are able to attend events, is what we call a hybrid event. And this hybrid event is obviously a combination of the in-person event, to the level and limitations we're allowed to do that as of today. And then the virtual events. So you're bringing together a live audience and a virtual audience together in the same space. And I think that might be a big part of what people are going to do going forward, even as we get back to the way things were, because reaching out virtually, you're able to get in front of an audience that you haven't been able to reach before, because now anybody can be in your event. And that's something to think about, not only for your own organization, but for your clients as well. So if you have any questions about services along those lines, or you just want to chat and ask about ideas and talk about ideas, you can reach out to me at chris.smith@losttribemedia.com, or you can reach me through our website at losttribemedia.com. So Tim, thanks. I'm interested in hearing all the things that Jim has to share today. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. We sure appreciate your sponsorship and supporting us on the technology. And I think it's exciting to hear what Chris is talking about, where you can go back to having those lives and have the guidelines in place to protect everybody. And at the same time, there are people that can't make meetings or are not ready, or maybe a more higher health risk. And Chris's company can provide that, really, that kind of, I call it the peanut butter jelly sandwich, Chris. It's sort of like two different things, but go well together. So we can go live and we can go electronic and we can accommodate everybody. And that's one of the positive results of this COVID-19. And speaking of positive results and things that we learned, I'm going to turn it over to Jim Hornyak, because he's going to really talk to us about a lot of unique things and positive things that we can use not only during COVID-19, but moving forward. So, Jim, I'm going to turn it over to you. Would you do us a favor and just give us a brief background on your company and your services, and then jump in to the PowerPoint. And everybody, any Q&A questions that you have, you feel free to put them in the Q&A or in the chat section, and we will answer those questions at the end so that we don't interrupt Jim's flow of thought. So don't forget, put the questions in now so I can get to them at the end, and then we'll have everybody out of here on time. So I'm going to turn it over to Jim. Thank you, Jim, for being our speaker.
Tim, thank you for the invitation. I'd also like to thank Craig Friedman for the initial invite a year ago, and Sharon Reed for keeping us all in line. And I'd like to thank Cooper Comstock for getting me in the Zoom meeting seamlessly, and NSME Akron Canton. I'm going to go over the agenda here real quick. Number one, say hello. So hello. I would tell you a little bit about me, help you live and work more successfully, change your working lives for the better and maybe even forever. And I'm going to really try hard not to say something stupid. A lot of people said, oh, I'm the expert in video conferencing. I'm not really an expert. I'm a student of it, because it changes so quickly. You're always learning. So that's our agenda. A little bit about me. This is my wife, Barbara, in Luxor, Egypt. And she was there. This picture was taken in 2001, September 10th. So you could imagine she had an extended vacation. She was stuck. My passion is also traveling. I'm also a sailor. In 1999, we sailed into Cuba from Isla Harris, Mexico, and we still love to travel a lot. My wife is now retired, so she's kind of kicking me in the butt to do more of that. So that's a little bit about me. My background, I have a degree in photojournalism from Kent State University. My experience really was more script writing, presentation designer. I was a technical AV equipment reseller for about 7 years, and for the last 20 years, video conferencing telecom specialist. So here's some questions we're going to answer in this event. What is video conferencing? Zoom, and how and why it became ubiquitous. And the third thing is the most important thing. I call it the take-home stuff. How can I leverage VC today in the sales process? I'd like to explain my background here. This is a Dassault Falcon 900EX corporate jet. It's a range of 4,240 nautical miles. It accommodates 12 passengers, and it has a normal cruise speed of 459 knots. What we're going to do is we're going to power this up with Zoom, and at the end of this thing, I'm going to give you the keys to the jet. But here's what happens when you power it up with Zoom. The range goes from 4,240 knots to this planet. It could hold 100 to 10,000 passengers, and the normal cruise speed is 186,282 miles per second. That's the speed of light. So anyway, let's get going. First of all, what is video conferencing? All right. And you know, a lot of people are saying, oh, I'm video conferencing and I'm using WebEx, I'm using GoToMeeting, I'm using Skype, and it's really not video conferencing, okay? And we've been working on a standard for 25 years in my world. So in my world, when someone bought hardware, they plugged it in, they connected on this standard, and they connected just like we connect with a cell phone call, an email, or texting. It was all standard. It's been in place for 25 years. And we didn't care what was at the other end. It didn't matter what company it was, what manufacturer they used. That was irrelevant. We connected just like we connect on anything else. And it's because of this H323 standard that's in place. This is the only time I'm going to get geeky with you guys, is this. And you might even write that down, H323. You don't even have to know anything but beyond that. I'm going to tell you why it's important to write this thing down later on. But let's define video conferencing. It refers to video communication among two or more participants in real time. Here's the problem with the apps that are out there now. You have GoToMeeting, you have WebEx, you have Skype, and you have Microsoft Teams. They are not on that H323 standard. There's no ubiquitous access, all right? The other problem is in these apps, they added video later. After they developed GoToMeeting, for example, or WebEx, those were just screen sharing apps that you connected on a telephone and you did a screen share. The other problem is Skype. Skype requires 4 times more bandwidth than Zoom, for example. All right, and now that's going to be phased out and it's going to be integrated into Microsoft Teams, which, by the way, is in another silo. So the problem with these is there's no ubiquitous access. So companies had to think about this. They go, what direction do we go to? Do we go with the standard that's been in place for 25 years where we could connect anywhere, anytime? To millions of conference rooms on a standard-based video conferencing, or do we go proprietary web conferencing and get stuck in a silo? And by the way, when I say millions of conference rooms, I own a public room. You could rent a room and go on to a website with a room broker and say, hey, I need to have a video conference in Paris, France, and they'll give you 3 or 4 options in downtown Paris, France, where you could rent a room and connect to anybody anywhere. All right, so that, that's the world that we live in video conferencing. But here's what the market wants now. All right, they want their cake and eat it too. They want that standard in the conference room, but they want a cloud service to seamlessly connect to that standard. It's just like I'm in a conference, I'm on an audio conference, I got a speaker phone, I want that guy on the way to the airport to have the ability to call into that meeting from his cell phone. That's what video needs to be now. That's what the market wants. The market wants ubiquitous communication, right? They want it to work like a cell phone, like texting. I don't care what service you're on. I don't care if you have an Android and I got an iPhone. It doesn't matter. I should send you a text and you should be able to get it. The problem is many IT firms and professionals don't understand this H323 algorithm. And this is an International Telecommunications Union standard. Now, this doesn't mean they're bad IT people. H323 is not really related to the functionality of a computer or a network. But if you're talking to an IT company and you say, gee, I want to deploy video conferencing in my company, and I want it to be on that H323 standard, and you get the deer in the headlights look, you may not want to use them to deploy video conferencing because the problem is they could pigeonhole you into one of those silos. All right, so that's something you gotta think about. This is what I mean by ubiquitous communication, and I'll give you an example about that, about ubiquitous communication. And let me go to my next slide here. Ubiquitous communication means I could be in a video conferencing room or on Zoom, and I could call someone on I get calls on video in my car on my cell phone. All right. Now, texting's bad enough. All right. Texting is bad enough. But when when they come in on video, I'm just talking to them just like a cell phone call. Right? That's what I'm doing. I'm not looking at the screen. They're seeing a car and they're seeing traffic go by, but I'm talking to them just like I'm on a cell phone call. So that's really what ubiquitous access comes from. So let's go to where Zoom came from and why it happened. This is the founder of Zoom, Eric Jan. And by the way, the first step in advertising was this banner they did a few years back. And this was in the internet, the San International Airport. They put this banner in their video conferencing that doesn't suck. But Eric Jan was the one that founded WebEx, sold it to Cisco, and worked at Cisco. And he was unhappy because he knew every night he went to bed, 50% of his customers were unhappy with WebEx. In fact, many of them hated it. They hated the product. And he pleaded with the Cisco board. He said, look, we really need to build WebEx from the ground up. We got to build it on the video algorithm, and we got to make this thing really easy to use and simple, but have all the robust features that clients want. And they didn't listen to him. And this was 9 years ago. So he left, started Zoom, and the rest is history. In fact, it's such a success story that it just took off right away in our world. I mean, it spread like wildfire in our world. And now with the pandemic hitting, it really took off because, and I call it an overnight success that took 9 years. But one of my favorite quotes, and it's going to come up here in a minute, is, and this was a quote from a mechanical engineer: all that is complex is not useful. All that is useful is simple. And this quote came from Mikhail Korishnikov, who developed the AK-47. And you know, it was really an interesting take on simplicity. And I think Eric Jan really went forward with that. I'm going to tell you some sales stories because that's what we're here for. We're here to talk about sales, and we're here to talk about what it does and how it affects it. I'm going to tell you one story here. I'm going to tell you actually 3 stories, and then I'm going to tell you one where a client used the technology. The biggest sale I ever made in the history of my sales career happened over 25 years ago. And I closed the deal on video conferencing on that standard. All right. I had 3 competitors going against me. I had Siemens, Lucent, and MCI WorldCom. We were all quoting the same exact equipment. So all the quoting process took place. All the quotes were there. The purchasing was there. I told the client, I go, look, I got an idea. I think we should do a formal presentation on how each of our companies is going to deploy this into the environment, into your service, into the company. So what I did is I told them, look, let's do a formal presentation. Well, I wanted to do that formal presentation because that's my arena. That's where I play. That's where I have control. So we did the presentation. They said that was really, really good. Of course, I knew the Siemens, Lucent, and MCI guys were scrambling because, you know, they don't want to do a presentation. And then after that was done, I said, look, I think we need to do one more presentation. And they're scratching their head. Why? I says, let's meet on video. Let's meet on the medium that we're talking about. So we set up a meeting. I set up my conference room really nice. I had an office in Hudson. had their logo. By the way, the company, the client is Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company, had their logo on the back. They called, and the first 2 minutes they were laughing. They go, okay, hotshot, you got the deal. So I didn't even get a chance to do the second presentation. We were just on video. What I found is Siemens, Lucent, and MCI were not using the product they were selling. And Goodyear had confidence in us because we were actually using the product we were selling. So that's how I closed my first deal on video conferencing. This story, and this is a sales story, this is one of our first clients with Zoom, and this goes back about 6 years. And my tech guys were saying, Jim, you got to do the Zoom, you got to sell the Zoom. And it was the same process as Goodyear. They gave us specifications of what they wanted, how they wanted this thing to be deployed, how they were using it. And I was nervous because I never used the app before, let alone demo it. And here I am going on a call, and they wanted this deployed. They wanted to see this work in the whole company footprint, which was the United States. So we had 60 locations. We were competing against everybody: hardware vendors, service providers, software companies. 8 o'clock was the first presentation. It was my presentation. I walked into the conference room with an iPad, plugged it into the, at least I knew how to plug it into the panel. So I plugged it into the panel, and I told my guys, I go, you know, I never use this, let alone demo it. They go, Jim, don't worry about it. Just hit the link on your email, sit back and shut up. I go, okay. So I went in there. All 60 locations came in. One guy came in on a moving van, and they asked, how was this thing? It was simple, scary. It worked so, so well. Then the client says, we have a question. We need to share video with audio. Can you do this on Zoom? And the guys in California, we made the Zoom guys get up at 5 o'clock in the morning for this presentation. They go, sure. What do you like to listen to? And he goes, I like Van Halen. So we did a YouTube Van Halen, and he even controlled the volume and talked over it. And then I left. I go into the lobby, and all the competitors are there scrambling with their laptops and all that hard. All I had was a tiny little notebook with an iPad in it, and that was it. So I waited till the end of the day. I called the client up, and I said, how did it go? He says, well, after your presentation, it went downhill, and it got from bad to worse. And he signed our contract that day. And this is something that I never even used, let alone demoed. So the product really kind of sells itself. We had another client come to us, Robots and Pencils. You may not have heard of them. They're all over the world. They're one of the largest developers of apps in the world. And they go, we have 3 problems. We have WebEx, GoToMeeting, and Skype. I go, what are the problems? He says, well, all the clients are using different apps, and every time we try to connect to them, there's a problem. I said, well, why don't you just use Zoom, and then the client doesn't have to worry about it because it doesn't cost them anything. They don't have to do anything. You even connect on a browser without loading the app. So they said, that sounds pretty good. So they signed up for 30 licenses. They called us a week later. They need 20 more. And they added 3 cameras, and they're asking us to put another camera up in Canada. So here I am selling an app to an app company. This is a sales story that I'm excited about, because the way I sell video conferencing is boring because I'm selling the technology, I'm using the technology, but this was a really good one. One of my partners is a CLEC, a competitive local exchange carrier, and every year they throw a lavish party, Christmas party, and they've been so good to me that I gave them a gift. It was a video phone that worked on the H323 standard. I go, guys, you've been really good to me. Here's this video phone. Use it in good health. So that was great. So I get a call about 3 months later. Hey, Jim, could you help us plug this thing in and get it to work? I go, sure, we could do it right over the phone. You just plug it in. I'll show you how to configure it. And in about 2 or 3 minutes, we made a video call. That was it. So I get a call a week later from the number 2 guy in the company. And I go, why all the interest in using the phone all of a sudden? He says, Jim, you're not going to believe this. He says, we did a video call on your phone, and we closed the largest deal in the history of our company on your phone. I go, what happened? He says, well, there's a company up in Wisconsin. They were the president of the company of the CLEC couldn't make the meeting. He was away on vacation. The number 2 guy couldn't leave to fly up there. Out of desperation, he said to the client, look, do you guys have video conferencing? And they go, yeah, we have it. He says, oh, we have it too, which was the phone. And they had their meeting and they inked the deal right on video. So what's exciting is, to me, is when clients use it, when clients succeed because of the technology, not because I succeed. You know, I succeed anyway. In spite of my ignorance and learning along the way, I'm succeeding anyway. But when clients use it in their application, that's when it really gets cool. So let's talk a little bit about the sales process. You got the satisfaction stage, the shopping stage, the apprehension stage, the decision stage, and the execution stage. But we're making most of our contact with the client during the shopping stage and the apprehension stage. So here's a little thing that I learned how to do in my proposals, and anybody could do this. This is really cool. Some of you may already be doing this now, but these are things that I took out of my proposals, but I always do 2 things in the proposals. I break the text up and I put visuals in there, and I link those visuals to a demo. All right, I link it. Here's the Zoom demo, so they go to the Zoom demo. That's a link to the video demo. If they have any questions, they can send me an email, and guess what? If they want to meet me face to face, all I got to do is click, and boom, they're in my Zoom room. All right, so that's a cool technique that I use in the proposal phase of my stuff. And you guys already know this information. I mean, this is not new, but what do they say? Fifth to 12th contact with a sales prospect closes the deal. All right, that's from the Sales Executives Association survey. So that's how many contacts. Now, what if you add video to that? All right, how is that affected? I'll tell you this. I'll tell you a couple things actually. In my data, and it's anecdotal, but most of my deals close in the 3rd or the 4th contact, and I'm using video. So most of my stuff closes much quicker using video as the contact. So I got time for questions. I would like to thank NSME again, but Tim, do we have any questions coming in? Tim, you're muted.
Yep. Hang on, Jim. Got lost here in the technology.
Sorry.
Jim, one of the questions is simply, what are a couple of the things that you're encountering when people convert to a higher level of using your services and Chris's services and the technology? What are a couple of the biggest challenges, and what have you found out to be a couple? It's a 2-part. The biggest challenges, and what have you found out to be 2 of the biggest surprises that people discover?
Oh, that's good. Well, let me start off with my challenge, because everybody else had the similar when I started using Zoom about 5 or 6 years ago. All right, it didn't bother me to use it. What bothered me was I'm going to start making sales calls on this thing. I was nervous about the other end. How are they going to handle this? So I just jumped in with both feet and I started making all my appointments on Zoom. I was using the free service to start with. And what I noticed, people liked it. They go, this is fantastic. The other end, you know, that was my big hesitation. That's the thing that kind of stopped me. So, and a lot of stories bubbled up from that. I called on one guy, it's an engineering company. He says, well, I don't have a camera on my computer. I go, well, that's okay. Can you listen to a video on your computer? Yeah. I says, well, I'll connect and we'll just we'll talk on the phone. So he saw me, he came in, I came into the meeting. He was so jacked about this thing. He says, you got a minute? I go, sure. He unplugged his laptop, brought it in the conference room, plugged his laptop into the panel, into this projector screen, and invited all the executives in to meet me. This guy sent me an email. I clicked on it, and it was so easy. Why aren't we using this? So because of the technology, I got a chance to meet face-to-face with the top people in the company. All right?
Yep.
So I'm thinking, boy, I really like this. So I started using it more and more, and I literally saved $100 a month on gas on my car, and my FaceTime with clients tripled. All right. And then I'll get this objection. Well, I like face-to-face calls. This is a face-to-face. This is an in-your-face call. All right. We're all on computers right now, right? And if you go into speaker view instead of gallery view in the upper right-hand corner, who's ever speaking is going to be the biggest head in that room. And guess what? I'm this far away from your face. That's in your face. All right. So, I mean, that's very, very powerful. Plus, the other thing I noticed is on the upside of this thing, and I'll use my other company, B2B Connect. We do a lot of presentations. And since the pandemic, everybody's meeting on Zoom. The presentations are phenomenal because everybody's doing screen shares, they're sharing video clips, they're sharing all kinds of stuff. And I'm learning more about their businesses because of the technology than I ever had before than when we met physically. We have one meeting that goes, we like this so much, we don't want to go back to the location now. All right. So, I mean, that's the upside of it. But I said, Tim, the biggest challenge is, what are they going to think at the other end? Well, the pandemic's kind of made that disappear because everybody's using this platform now. But keep in mind that H323, that's the only technical thing you have to write down. And if you're talking to anybody about deploying anything in your business, it's got to be on that standard. If it's not on that standard, you're going to run into a silo, you're going to run into a headache. And again, the IT guys are not going to want, they're going to put you in a silo. And it's not that they're bad IT guys. It's just that they don't know about that telecom standard. That's all.
Yep. Okay.
I hope I answered the question without getting too.
Yeah, no, it's good. Could you go over a simple summary again of the 5 parts of the sales process?
Well, you got the satisfaction process. All right. So, you know, they're satisfied with the product, but then they're thinking maybe I need to upgrade the product or I'm having serious problems with the product. Then they go into the shopping stage, and then I'll share this again with you so you see it. They go into the shopping stage, the apprehension stage. You know, a lot of the contact is done in these 2 things, and they go into decision, and execution is very important because that's your next sale. You know, it's how the thing is deployed. Are they really happy? Are they going to eliminate buyer's remorse? You see what I mean?
Yep. Okay.
All right. So a lot of the contact happens, you know, a lot of the sales contact happens right here and right there.
Okay. Jim, we have another question. Using VC has been effective for 12 weeks. Do you believe it can be used solely going forward in the sales process, or is your opinion it is better in combining with the in-person meetings and mixing it up?
I would say either way. If someone says, geez, I like to combine, then do the combine. I don't, you know, I'm not a never ever type of guy. I mean, right now, my initial appointments with clients are all on video because I sell the product. All right. If someone's selling nuts and bolts, you know, my suggestion is try to have as many meetings with them on video as you can. And then when you go see them, it's to play golf, take them out to lunch, sign the contract. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
Those meetings aren't going to go away. The airlines are having a real big problem right now because their profits are not made on leisure travel. Their profits are made on business travel. That's where the money's made. And I know this because a lot of people change their flight plans at the last minute. The price gets jacked up, but now they're discovering, you know what? I'll just do a Zoom meeting.
Yeah.
It's just so much easier to do.
Okay.
And Zoom, you got to understand, Zoom went from 10 million meetings a month to 300 million meetings a month inside of 3 months.
Tremendous change.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah. Chris, let me throw the same question at you. What's your opinion from your end about going VC solely, or do you think mixing it up and combining is better, or what's your opinion from your angle?
Well, let's assume that, we don't have any more issues with the COVID virus, or we have minor issues with the COVID virus. I agree with Jim. There are some people that, it's like we deal on the marketing side with people that still want to have pamphlets or still want to create a flyer. And we always say retire the flyer, because, video communications and digital communications, digital marketing, that's really where everything is at now. So there are some clients that are going to say, hey, I want you to come and talk face to face. And again, I agree with Jim. Do that because you're going to have lunch. You're going to have a conversation in addition to business stuff. You're going to play golf. You're going to do whatever. But, I have found, for years, there is a small number of clients that want me to come over and sit down with them, or want to come into the office and sit down. Most of the time they say, let's just jump on a call. This is just taking that call to another level. And I think people, I've said this even a month into the pandemic, that I think there are business practices that people have learned to employ because of the pandemic that they're just never going to go away from. And I think this is part of it. So yeah, I think you can combine those things, but the travel, I don't know a lot of companies, especially if you own a small business like I do. I don't think I've ever flown except one time to meet with a client. It's always been on the phone or video conference.
Yeah. All right. Let me go back to Jim. Jim, where do you see the future of Zoom going after the pandemic?
It's going to become like when we text, and like when we email, and like we do a cell phone call. Could you imagine doing our business without those tools right now? It's going to be the fourth tool. All right. I have my Zoom credentials on the back of my business card. Now, if someone wants to meet me, all I got to do is go to zoom.us, and by the way, my meeting ID is my phone number, because I'm old and I can't remember anything, but I can remember my phone number. It's also in the signature on my email address. So if anybody wants to meet me, it's real simple, just to click, and boom, we're connected. So I think the future is going to be, we're going to use video just like we use email, just like we use texting, and like we use a cell phone call. All right, that it's going to be just part of the way we communicate. I'll tell you, I got some really fun observations. The thing that I love about technology is the cultural lag issues. It's not the technology, it's but people trip over themselves using it. And I do meetings with groups that I belong to every week or every month, maybe twice a month. And I used to give the option, look, you could come in on telephone or you could come in on video. And what I've observed is the people that came in on video were engaged in the meeting. The people that came in on just audio, they weren't engaged in the meeting. They might as well not have been in the meeting. All right. So what I did is on those meetings that I control and I host, no more phone. In fact, what happened was when the pandemic hit, the audio bridge that Zoom uses got so jammed that it became unreliable. So I told people, no more phone. I don't give the phone numbers anymore. You cannot go into a meeting with me via phone anymore. That's done. You got to come in on video. And if you're afraid to see yourself on video, you just click and mute the video. Now you're talking. But one thing I've observed, though, is those people that come in on audio, they're not engaged in that meeting. They're just not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well,
and
Jim,
the difference could, go ahead, Tim, I'm sorry.
Yeah, what are some of the other features besides the basics in Zoom? What's the cutting edge? What's next, or what do you think?
Well, I think what's going to happen, Zoom is so feature rich. I mean, my IT guys that I work with, the reason why they like it is because if they're on a one-on-one meeting with a client, they could take over their computer. It'll allow access to their desktop, whether it's PC or Mac, it doesn't matter. All right. But I see this evolving to the point where it's going to become second nature, like making a cell phone call. You're going to be making a video call. Your big screen TV at home, you're going to click on a button and see Aunt Betty in Chicago at Thanksgiving when she couldn't make it over here. All right.
Yeah, this is Star Trek stuff. Some of us have been waiting around since 1966 for this to be a reality.
Right. I think that now a couple of verticals that we're very successful at right now. the legal vertical, God help us. I mean, we're doing a lot of stuff. The lawyers love us because we put the equipment in their conference room. They hit 2 buttons and they got a deposition going in from California on Zoom. So it's easy for them. It's easy for the people to come in. And the lawyers don't want to mess with technology. They just want it to freaking work. All right. They got enough headaches without messing around with the technology. So that's been a huge vertical for us. The non-for-profit, interestingly enough, has been a very big vertical for us. We didn't go after them. They kind of went after us because our hardware program, we finance the hardware. They don't have to capitalize any equipment, you know, so because we do hardware as a service. And we work with a couple manufacturers that help us with that. So they like us because they can get access to the technology and not have to spend an arm and a leg. You got to keep in mind how much video cost. You go back in the mid to late 80s, and if someone said to me, I need video conferencing in my conference room, we would say, no problem. You need to budget $75,000 in that room.
Yeah.
All right. And by the way, the other end had the same equipment. All right.
Yeah.
Well, in the 90s, the standards started to come in. And then Telecom came out with the view station. You don't need 75, you need $8,000 on a TV. All right. So it started getting better, quicker, faster, a lot less expensive and more accessible. And the thing that really got me excited about this whole industry was about 25 years ago, we were selling the Telecom and a bridging company called us. And a bridge, I don't know if you guys know, but back in the day, a bridge costs about $500,000, $250,000, and that's where you could connect everybody. And at that time, we didn't even have the H.323 standard. We had H.320, which worked on ISDN, which through the phone companies, right? So they invited us to a bridge demo, and they go, we're going to have 120 locations. And I go, oh, this is going to be a train wreck. This is going to be a mess. So all these conference rooms connected to the bridge, it was total opposite of being a mess. It was phenomenal. And, you know, Joe in St. Louis had a question, and he asked the question, and Joe's face was full screen on that TV, and it wasn't a flat screen TV at the time because we didn't have any of those. And he asked the question, I go, my God, this is better than if we were in an auditorium, much better than if we physically got together. And because I could hear his question, the presenter didn't have to repeat it because maybe Joe would have been in the front row in the auditorium. All right. So what I thought was going to be a train wreck turned out to be, and I go, oh my God, this is going to change the world. And I've kept on top of it as best as we could as a group. I mean, we look at everything. I got every app that's out there on my computer. I got them all. There's only about 3 of them that work on the H.323 standard. Those are the only ones we recommend.
Let me interrupt you. I want to ask you a quick question, Jim, and then I have a question for both Jim and Chris to wrap up because we only got a few minutes. Real quick answer. Is there anything a person can do to keep a super high signal to avoid low signals, Jim? Anything simple?
Yeah, well, if I don't know what kind of bandwidth you have, but if you're on your computer, try to close all the other apps that you got open. And make sure there's no one in the household that's online or something. You know, turn the TV off. You know, I turn things off. I turn my cell phone off. I just shut all that other stuff down.
Okay.
All right. The good news is the bandwidth is is getting a lot less expensive too. So you may be able to call your provider and say, look, I can get, you know, we do this all the time. We got clients that have, we provide bandwidth, and I work with all the vendors, and a lot of times I could reduce a client's bill and give them more bandwidth at the same time.
Okay. Chris, you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would say that like before we got on this meeting today, you know, if you have like tablets and you have Roku and all this other stuff in your house, and it's all connected to your Wi-Fi, you know, I go and I turn all that stuff off. One of the things that we always recommend to clients when they want us to come in to a live venue and stream video to Zoom or stream video to Facebook or YouTube, we always like to have a hard line in those particular instances because that's going to be your best upload speed over Wi-Fi. And if you think about it, if you're in a ballroom and you're going to stream a live event to Zoom or YouTube, and you're going to connect through Wi-Fi, you're fine when you first get there or when you do a test. But the moment you get 300 people in a room and they're all connected or trying to connect to that same Wi-Fi, it's going to slow down your upload speed. So, there's a lot of technical things on those, but from the standpoint of home use, Jim said it best. If you were going to have a really important meeting, go in and make sure that your, stuff that doesn't need to be connected to your Wi-Fi at home, make sure it's disconnected for the time being.
Okay, Chris, you're on there. I'm gonna ask you first, and then Jim, I want you to answer the same question. Would like you guys to give a 30-second answer. So this is called the elevator video answer.
Uh-oh.
Okay, we all heard of the elevator speech. This is the elevator video. Okay, Chris, I'll let you go first. What is the most important lesson to learn in conducting VC meetings and discussions? What's that most important lesson?
Try to be as succinct and prepared and brief as possible. Somebody, when I went to Air Staff College, I remember there was a colonel that gave a talk, and he said, "Stand up to be seen, speak up to be heard, sit down to be remembered." So the most important thing with video is the same thing when you're going in person. Be prepared, say what you need to say, have the discussion, and then be productive.
Okay, Jim?
Same thing. Okay, I would say have a quiet place in your home office where there's no outside disturbances.
Okay.
Right? A separate room. That's number one. Okay. Number two, have the right camera and microphone. What I love about this one here, it's got a pan-tilt zoom. So if I have to show something more in the back, all I got to do is press a button and it'll move me around to use the background. And the third thing, and don't laugh, make sure you got pants on.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. What?
Right. Well, I got there's one story. There's a client of mine that he used Zoom, and he had a meeting in China, and he had a suit and tie on. He had a gorgeous home office, and he had his boxer shorts on. And of course, there's a 13-hour difference. When he got up to get coffee, they were all laughing at him at the other end. So,
hey, one last real quick thing, Jim. We got to go. Is Zoom going to be able to keep up with the demand? Yes and no?
Absolutely, yes. And the reason why, two reasons. They are traded on the NASDAQ, and Sequoia Funds backed them up about 4 or 5 years ago. And if you know anything about Sequoia Funds, they're the technical venture capital people, and they're known for picking winners.
Okay.
So
listen.
Yes, they'll be able to handle. By the way, and they're using partners like us because they're so inundated. They give us a lot of their clients because we're the ones that are doing the white glove service on Zoom for clients.
Good. Well, on behalf of National Sales Marketing Executives, want to thank Jim Hornyak from JW Hornyak Videoconference and Telecom. Also want to thank Chris Smith from Lost Tribe Media and Focal Point. And thanks Sharon Reed, Executive Director of National Sales and Marketing Executives. Don't forget, everybody, we are going to go live, and we're going to be zooming in on the conference or the presentation. So we're going to do both live and electronic. July 14th, Toby Hoy, Stages of Team Development. We'll do it again August 11th with Tim Demoff. And we want to thank everybody for being on today. Jim, thanks again for a great presentation, very knowledgeable. Chris,
thank you.
Thanks for your additional input. Everybody, have a great day. And remember, be safe and be kind, and have a great day.